When Anastasia and her mother fled occupied Mariupol in May, she says there was only one safe way out: through Russian filtration, a system set up by Russia to temporarily detain and interrogate Ukrainian civilians. The goal? To single out any who might pose a threat to Russia's invasion, according to U.S. intelligence. Their first stop, a center in Donetsk, where she says they slept with 50 others in a school gym that smelled of trash and death.
That night, somebody died.
Somebody died?
Yeah, somebody died.
While you were at the filtration center?
Yeah. It was an old man. When I saw that they just took away his body, I just think, okay, so you are not a people, you are not a human if you behave like this.
The next day, she says they were sent farther east, to the Russian border, where they were interrogated about Ukraine's military and on their views about the war.
You have to smile. Because you have to survive.
Anastasia says the Russians let them walk over the border into Russia, where they began a weeks-long journey back to Ukraine. The United States says as many as 1.6 million Ukrainians have gone through filtration, including 260,000 children. Some have reported being beaten and tortured, denied food and water.
What it boils down to is a series of horrors happening in real time in Europe that echoes a very dark period of the past.
Vlad Buryak was 16 years old in April when he says his car was stopped at a Russian checkpoint. He says troops searched his phone and found pro-Ukrainian social media.
And these Russian soldiers put on me guns and say me, maybe I kill you right now.
Vlad says he was detained at a filtration camp for 48 days.
In 48 days, I worked, and my obligation was clean the torture room. It was a room where Russian soldiers torture Ukrainian military people, Ukrainian civilian people.
How did they torture them?
Russian soldiers use electricity, use needles under the nails.
Vlad says his cellmate, a 24-year-old church worker, emerged from 2 days of torture and slit his wrists in front of Vlad.
I tried to save him, but I understand that this man have a problem with head after tortured. He broke.
Vlad says he doesn't know whether the man survived. And a few weeks later, Vlad says he was released from Russian filtration. A new U.S. intelligence assessment lays out the filtration process, from intake at centers or checkpoints to interrogation and processing. It says those deemed most threatening are detained, some indefinitely. Those less threatening are forcibly deported to Russia. Ukrainians deemed non-threatening are either deported or allowed into Ukrainian-held territory. Last month, Yale University and the Conflict Observatory used satellite imagery to identify 21 filtration sites with high confidence, just in one part of eastern Ukraine. At one prison camp, they identified recently dug up earth.
We believe that there is enough evidence to say that these objects are consistent with graves.
Moscow dismisses all of these allegations as propaganda. Russia's UN ambassador says more than 2.4 million Ukrainians have entered Russia since the war started, but all voluntarily, fleeing Ukrainian violence, and none of them imprisoned or mistreated.
Do you seriously think that such a large number of people could be forced to move and forced to keep silent?
But the head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council says Ukraine knows the truth. He says, after the war, we'll do everything in our power to return Ukrainians to their motherland. Yevhenia, not her real name, is 22. She says she and her 2-year-old daughter were stopped at a checkpoint after fleeing constant shelling in Luhansk. She says she was blindfolded and led into a filtration center to be searched for pro-Ukrainian tattoos. When male Russian troops forced you to strip down to your underwear, were you afraid that you might get raped? She says, I was more worried about my child. You can beat me, rape me, mock me. Just please don't touch my child. Yevhenia says they saw the scar from her C-section and insisted she was hiding contraband inside her body. Her young daughter was detained in a separate room. My daughter was crying, Mama, Mama, she says. I'm begging them, please, let me go to my child.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.